about project justification and environmental impact. We have to be concerned about more global aspects of the global environment. And a tsunami, for instance, is an example of what can be the impact, not on one country, not on one project, not on one population, but on the global population. It's becoming more and more urgent to address this problem on a general, with a general approach and not a project-by-project approach. And I personally, there is this problem, and there is also the problem of financing of this, not only reconstruction after disaster, but also financing prevention of the cost of what could be the environmental impact of any disaster in the world. So I come over to this podium here to just make a general recommendation, which would be that how can we accelerate the concern in question to the institutions like the World Bank, for instance. I looked, before coming here, at the long process, for instance, of the IPCC. You had 45 meetings this year, and you had 45 since the Tokyo agreement. And I think the progress are substantial, but they are not enough. I think the message I would like to do is that, we have to progress, and to progress faster. And we have to seize the opportunity maybe of the World Bank Group reorganization and so on and so forth, to make sure that they would, that the bank would take the privilege it has of, and see how we could capitalize with its limited resources, unfortunately, and how we could involve other private sector and so on to leverage the bank ability to address this global concern. Thank you.
We can get a few more comments and then there can be a response. Would you like to come up?
My name is Nadia, Saad. I have worked for the World Bank for 17 years. I have to say that I owe so much to Robert Goodland. When I came here, I was the regional director of the United Nations Environment Program in Beirut. I had the whole Middle East. And I had met Robert Goodland at one of these international conferences, and I thought, my world, everybody in the World Bank is like that. So I was so happy to join the bank. And really, I was shocked for the very first year. I was, of course, talking about environment, and my boss called me. And he said exactly that. He said, you know, Nadia, if you want to have a career in the World Bank, you got to stop the nonsense. Environment, you know, the blue sky and blue birds, it's very nice, it's very feminine, he said. We here in the World Bank, this is not the United Nations, he said. This is the World Bank, and we are serious. And you have, if you want to have a career in the bank, you have to start thinking like a man, he said. I promise this was textually his word. He was a very successful person. He became a vice president. And I was so shocked. And the only thing I could do was to telephone Robert. And we had lunch, and he was so comforting. He gave me confidence. And I fought and fought. And I really feel that I did contribute to something on the environment in the World Bank. Now, I want to ask you, sir, for what you just said. I don't think we're going to make much progress before somebody or some people get together and try to articulate a vision convincing enough to make people feel that they are in the same boat, that all the religions that came were not at all capable today of giving us this vision that would make us feel we're together and we are one and we are in danger together, so that we can become aware before the ship in which we all are sink. Could you just suggest some panel, some IPCC that would put a sort of philosophical, conceptual thing behind what you have discovered and you're talking to us about?
Well, if I might give you a very short response, I think it would require all stakeholders. It has to be business, it has to be politics, it has to be civil society, research and academia. And I think all of us must understand exactly what you said, that we are in this together. We are all residents of Spaceship Earth, and we have pioneers and leaders like Professor Herman Daly. He and I are the followers of someone who was ahead of his time again, Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen, a remarkable economist who really should have got the Nobel Prize, but the fact is that those who are, off the beaten track don't get prizes like that. So he never got it. But the point I'm making is that you really need leaders in every section of society to tell us that we have to change the way we've been doing business. Because I think if you leave it to just one segment of society, that's not going to be enough. What we need is a major change. That's becoming increasingly apparent. And I also have a great deal of faith in the next generation. The youngsters of today, I think, need to be sensitized on the stark choices that they have. And not only can they make a difference and do things that are right, frankly, they can shame us adults into doing the right thing. So I believe there's a need to work across the board with every stakeholder group. And if we were to do that, then maybe we would have a cleaner and a better world. And something that we feel proud at sort of leaving behind for the next generation. So other than this platitude, I really don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Yes, would you like to come up? The gentleman here, yeah.
Hi, my name is Mook Bangalore. I work at the Climate Change Group of the World Bank for a grand total of 10 days. So my question specifically is less substantive and more call for advice. People like me, people in the new generation, the young generation, sort of drawing on Robert's life and his work and sort of looking at the challenges ahead. What sorts of advice do you have for people like us, people like me, getting started right now? Thank you.
Well, the only advice I would give is keep your freshness of thinking. Don't let it get stale, because the moment you do, then you've become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So that's all I would say.
My name is Daphne Wysham. I'm one of those scruffy NGOs that you referred to earlier. I work at the Institute for Policy Studies, and I'm a very good friend of Robert Goodland's, and send my condolences to his family, and Johnman and Arthur. And one of the last emails I got from Robert, he was urging me on to criticize the World Bank's latest energy strategy. And I just want to put out as one possible way forward for the World Bank to address the climate crisis is to begin to fully account for the greenhouse gas emissions of all of their investments as a start, and to re-examine the extractive industries reviews, recommendations, and begin to implement them. It's wonderful that they're moving away from coal, but there's a lot more that the bank could be doing and leading other banks in that direction. We saw what kind of impact their phasing out of most forms of coal had on the other banks. So I don't mean to turn this into a political statement, but I have a feeling Robert would want me to make this statement, and so I'm doing so. And in honor of him, I just want to say, you know, had he not been urging us on, a lot of us would not have spoken out, and so we owe it to him for a lot of the changes that we've managed to effect in the World Bank.
Yeah, why don't you come along?
Robert Goodland, a good man. I met Robert Goodland at the World Bank. I was in the support staff, and I think I attended one of his lectures on the environment. It might have been about Brazil and the Amazon. But I guess I'm in the active side of his associates, activists rather, and I might have been on the scruffy side at some points, but I was involved in the American Indian movement, and I think I talked to Robert about saving the Black Hills from uranium mining, such things, and the justice that needed to be done for indigenous peoples, especially the women indigenous population. And I have great respect for him and his work. Thank you.
My name is Neil Hughes, and in 1975, I was in the bank's Brazil division, and my boss said, I want you to go down to the Amazon area of Brazil and do a reconnaissance. And I said, I won't go without an ecologist. And fortunately for me, someone gave me Robert's name, and I called him up, and he was willing to go. And we had been there for several days, and we had seen a lot of things, and I think he could see that I was really overwhelmed with the size of the area that I was supposed to look at and all of the problems I was seeing. And he wanted to give me the feeling that, you know, no matter how difficult things do look at the time, just keep thinking, just keep looking for a way through. And he looked at me and he said, just remember, it's only a jungle out there.
Well, this just reminds me of another anecdote that is associated with Mahatma Gandhi. He was asked about what he thought about wildlife. He says, yes, the trouble is that wildlife is decreasing in the jungles, but it's increasing in the cities.
I am really propelled up here after the comments about Brazil. Thank you. I headed the Carajás iron ore project in Brazil. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Mary Oak Smith. I was in the industry division and worked on the Carajás iron ore project for about 4 years directly with Robert Goodland. And I know what an impact he had on that whole project and program that you have been talking about. And I appreciate all the precursor missions that were in preparation in the bank for this. But when we started work, there was not even a baseline of environmental activity in the area that we were working in. And he made sure that we developed a baseline with CVRD, which is the company that we were working with, and they did that. They did not have an environmental division. They only had a housing division. And the housing division was headed by a woman who was very committed to the environment. And so by the time that our project came to the board, that housing department was an environmental department. And it was during that time, too, that the Amerindian policy that you have been talking about really came into effect. And we made a visit to there were 4 Amerindian reservations around the deposit. And the Amerindians had never seen a Westerner before again. And we were the ones that had to be careful not to be carrying disease when we went to see them. But it was, I witnessed Robert Goodland's just first-rate output and concern and camaraderie and what the difference that he made in that whole project and program area.
Hi, I'm Ivy. I joined the bank less than 6 months ago to work on green growth and climate change in Europe and Central Asia. And so I think today is one of the most inspiring days I've had at work. So thank you for the lecture and thank you for the event. It seems like to me the core of the tragedy of the commons lies in our human need or desire for immediate gratification rather than delayed gratification. The satisfaction I would get from eating a burger just seems so much greater than what I think it would do for the environment if I refrain from it. And the same way that I think what depresses me when it comes to engaging with countries is that politicians, people who are in positions of power and decision-making, are confined by the short-term horizon. It's about the election cycle. So when, especially if we see now that, with the recession or the aftermath of the recession, who cares about renewable energy? Like, why don't we burn more coal? And I know that there's more movement away from it, but when push comes to shove, money seems to matter in the end, and whether you can be reelected one more time. And I know that nobody can predict the future, and questions about incentives and how to change have come up already. But I want to ask, from your perspective, if you look at history, what are some signs of encouragement, and how have we dealt with the tragedy of the commons, and what has been more effective than others? Thank you.
Well, that's a very difficult question, but may I say that there is enough in human history that gives you confidence that we will get over these problems. People have suffered, people have to wait a long time, but unfortunately today we don't have the luxury of time. We are really moving ahead at a speed, and the kinds of pressures that we're exerting on the ecosystems, the natural resources of this planet have reached a point where we will have to bring about change rather quickly. Mention was made about believing that the earth is flat. There were people who were burnt at the stake for holding on to their beliefs that the earth is round. And in the past, there have been so many examples of resistance to change, but change did take place. And I think human beings can rise above what you very accurately referred to as immediate gratification and succumbing to greed. If you look at the aftermath of the Second World War, I find it quite remarkable that those very countries that were at war with each other, soon after the war ended, became partners. I mean, there's the example of the Marshall Plan, there's the example of several other such initiatives, which really have given us, I believe, a much better world. So I would like to believe that with knowledge, with understanding, with the realization that business as usual cannot continue, we will probably rise to the occasion. But we also need leaders at every level. And I think you've been in the bank 6 months. I hope you don't mute your voice and that you keep talking the way Robert Goodland used to talk. He could have changed. He spent such a long time with the bank. he could have become a conventional banker. I mean, the lady who mentioned the fact that when she first met him, she thought all the bankers, all the world bankers were like him. Now, the fact is, despite all the other bankers being very different from Robert, he retained his individual personality, his beliefs, and his faith. And I hope that's what he would do. If all of us were conscious of what we believe in and stuck to that, hopefully we'll find a way. I think there's enough in human history to give us that level of confidence.
Thank you very much for that very inspiring note. I think at this juncture, may I request John Min or Arthur to come forward and say a few words. I'm sure that people are waiting for some words from you. You can come here and sit.
No, I don't need to. I'm very grateful for everyone who came for this kind of a big occasion. If I could hear Robert just now, he would probably say, in spite of all the challenges I had a hell of a good time. Thank you so much for coming.
It's now my very pleasant privilege to bring this meeting to a close. I would like to thank Dr. Pachauri for having come here, given us such an inspiring address. We know how valuable your time is and how many other engagements you have. We are very truly grateful to you for having come. We are also very thankful to John Min and to Arthur and to other friends of Robert Goodland for having helped us to organize this meeting, which really, very, very successful. And I think, last but not least, I would like to say, I would like to say one more thing. Our two office managers, Miran and Swati, have done a tremendous thing to organize this meeting, and I would like to place on record our appreciation. And now I come to the last but not least. If Robert had been here, he would have been absolutely delighted to see all of us and to see the way, we are thinking about him. And so I really wish he was here, but sometimes, we have to face reality and get on with our lives. Thank you very much for coming.